righty, welcome to the Real Estate Rockstar Partnership Live, where we're helping real estate agents, we're helping investors, we're helping anybody who wants to be involved in real estate, earn multiple streams of real estate income. Our motto is to help you earn more, have fun, live free, and of course, give back. I'm your host. I am fired up, Phil Barneo, and this is my beautiful wife.
Hey, I'm Heather.
And we have a guest on today, is actually a friend of ours. He is a real estate attorney. Welcome Ed BRUNO to the show today. Say what's up, Ed.
Glad to be here.
All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about for realtors and for investors. We're going to talk to you about the attorney in the transaction. So, and it's a little bit different depending on who we're talking about here. We're going to get into both. So if you're a realtor or if you're an investor, stay tuned. We're going to talk to you and help you understand the things that are important in a transaction when it comes to, you know, obviously dealing with an attorney. But right before we get into it, do me a favor, however you're watching this, go ahead and smash the subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, do us a favor, drop us a like, drop us a comment, let us know that you have a pulse and you're alive and kicking and that you like the content that we're giving you. So with that said, let's get into what we're doing here. So in a real estate transaction, we'll start with realtors first, right? Is that cool?
Sure.
All right. So realtors, the job, let's just say, when it comes to a transaction, there's a lot of parties involved. Obviously, a realtor is involved. There's a client that's involved. And in this case, we're going to talk about the attorney that's involved with the transaction. Now, the goal of any transaction when it comes to the realtor and the attorney and the client or the buyer or the seller is to have a smooth and seamless transaction and to have it, be fast, right? And efficient. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to kind of develop more congruency between the attorney, the realtor, and the client to make that happen, right? So what are some of the things, if the agents out there that are watching, there's a lot of things that go on in a transaction, good and bad, that we can just kind of bring up here when it comes to the attorney and the realtor in the transaction. So Heather, what are some of the things that we as agents, really love in a real estate attorney? And what are some of the things that, really are frustrating in a transaction with an attorney?
Yeah, so in a seamless and smooth and enjoyable transaction, you have an attorney like Ed who is, number one, very communicative, right? So they're willing and able to talk to not only the client when they need them, but also the realtor and keep everybody on the same page. Everyone has the ultimate goal of reaching that closing table. And so as long as everybody knows, in real time what's going on, then that makes that process a whole lot easier. So I would say that that's number one, is just being, open, transparent, and willing to communicate with the people that need you when they need you.
Absolutely. And on the other side of that coin, probably the most frustrating factor when dealing with an attorney is an attorney that doesn't communicate with the agent. And so let's just clarify too real quick. What's the agent's job in a real estate transaction? It's basically, when it comes to contracts, once we have like a deal in place here, the agent is the facilitator of the whole deal, right? Like it's kind of the orchestrator, like, hey, let's just make sure this deal is moving forward. Let's make everybody's job easy. We're trying to make the attorney's job easy. We're trying to make sure that the deal gets to the closing table as fast and smooth as possible. And so one of the toughest things to deal with is an attorney that does not communicate, because once the deal goes to contract, then it's kind of in the attorney's hands, so to speak, at that point for the most part. And but there's a lot of things that need to still happen, right? And if the attorney is not communicating with us,
right,
then we don't know where we are at that point in that deal, in that transaction, to be able to help push it forward. And a lot of times there's a lot of things that we can do as agents to help get things done. And when the attorney, if he would just, or she would just communicate better with us, we could help get that deal moving forward fast.
Right.
So I'm going to ask Ed, on that note, like, what are some of the things that, what are your thoughts on what we just said? And what are some of the things that kind of you also look for in an agent that would help make your job easier to make the whole transaction smoother?
Okay, well, communication, starting with that's important. a lot of attorneys, in my experience, are a little standoffish when it comes to the real estate agent or the real estate broker. They don't want to be bothered.
Mhm.
Almost they can be kind of jerks sometimes.
We won't mention any names. That's true. I mean, they just don't want to be bothered for whatever reason. I look at it differently. I think that the attorney and the agent really are on the same team. They should be communicating. They should be working together, because that's what would be in the best interest of the client. And that's what would get us to the closing table fastest. So I think open communication between the agent and the attorney is important. There could be information we need from them. There could be information we need, they need from us. I've actually had occasions where the attorney on the other side is not communicating with the broker. So they actually call me. It's not my broker. The broker on the other side is getting absolutely no response from the attorney on the other side of the deal. So they're reaching out to me, and I'm always, happy to talk to them and give them whatever information I can. But I think an open line of communication and treating it like you're on the same team as the agent and getting the deal done is important.
Yeah, 100%. Communication is huge. And if you're an attorney watching, remember that communication is the biggest thing. We all want to, nobody gets paid till we get to the closing table. The
Right.
client doesn't sell their house or become a new homeowner until we get to the closing table. And that's the goal. That's the finish line of the race that we're trying to get to.
Yeah, let the agent help you. Let them earn their commission.
Yeah.
They get one of the bigger checks at the closing
That
table.
is
Make them earn it.
That's right. And we want to earn it. And
Yeah.
so yes, we do appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that, to like, what are some, like, a lot of times these things come up, like, what can we do as agents to make your job easier when a deal is stalling because of something? There's a lot of times we can get involved, and that's what we always try to do
You kind
as
of,
good agents.
push it along.
Right,
Yeah.
push it along, find out what are the hiccups that are holding this up. Why have you not, done XYZ? Why is title not in? Why are municipals not in? Like, look, we'll call the town. We'll, whatever it takes to get the deal done, we'll do what we have to do to try to facilitate it faster.
Yeah.
Now, what else can we do to
Yeah,
help you?
and like, anything that the agent can do, it's one less thing that I have to do as the attorney. So if I can get an agent to chase down a buyer or a seller to sign a lead-based paint disclosure or something like that, that's better for me. If I could send that document to the agent and let the agent get it signed and get it back to me, it's one less step for me. Another thing that's important that I find is getting all of the details at the start of the transaction.
Okay.
We get a purchase offer or a purchase agreement or something like that. It's helpful if it covers everything, like the appliances. It's an important, that's one of the things that we often have to call our client for. We're preparing the contract, and it's going to take longer now to get this contract out, because now I have to track down the client and say, what appliances are included in this deal, because the purchase offer doesn't mention anything about appliances.
So what you're saying, if I'm correct, is like the agent should have their crap together when it comes to the specifics and the details of the contract, so that you're not taking all of your extra time to figure out what should or shouldn't be in this contract, what's included or not included, what are the details that need to go into this contract.
Exactly. The more information I have at the outset when I'm preparing the contract, the easier it is for me to get the contract out quickly. And everybody wants these contracts out quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing I was going to bring up too. Like, something else that I really respect working with attorneys is when they operate in a timely manner, and you always do. So that's helpful to know, like, when everybody kind of has it together and knows what's expected of them, then it's easier, especially in a market like this. It's super competitive. You want to do things as quickly as humanly possible. And so that's good to know, because, if I have everything that I need in one day and Ed has everything that he needs in 1 to 3 days, then these contracts can be done, up in a week, right?
Yeah. And I'm usually copying the agent on all the emails. If I'm sending an email,
That's huge. And most attorneys don't do that. And that is very helpful.
If I'm sending an email to the other attorney, I just CC or sometimes BCC the agent, whether it's sending out the proposed contract or whether it's sending out a commitment letter. This way the broker knows where we are on the transaction and they don't have to call us. And we
Right.
don't
We
have to
could
waste
follow
time taking a
up
call.
knowing that you sent contracts or whatever part we're at, and seeing with the other side, calling the other agent and saying what's up, contracts went out on this day. Why are they not back yet? Right. We do
Yeah.
the legwork to get the deal done. So
And it helps to be factual. Like, we know if contracts went out or they didn't go out. Do we have to call them? Well, no, not if we were CC'd when they went out. So that makes everybody's life easier. And then the client feels good too, because a lot of times this buyer or seller has only been with us, the realtor, for the duration of the beginning of the deal. And then all of a sudden it goes to the attorneys, and when they don't answer, when they don't keep you in the loop, it becomes, this client is now asking the agent questions, and we're in a roadblock where we're like, well, we don't really know because nobody will talk to us.
yeah.
So
Yeah. And on our job, like what we do as agents and what we teach other agents to do in our trainings and everything like that, and our coaching, is your job is to get to the finish line fast and efficient. Like, your job is not, I actually have heard many times, I'm sure you can attest to this, agents that when contracts go out, this is what they do. It's like that emoji, it's in the attorney's hands. Like, it's not my job anymore. That is wrong. That is absolutely ridiculous. Like, what you're doing is you're dumping your load on the attorney and thinking that, your job is done. That's not true. Your job is not done. Your job is to continue facilitating the transaction and helping, like all the things that we just said, get done, so you can get to your client to the closing table fast and efficient and with more seamless. Like, I've heard horror stories about clients that, like, it's like your buying process or selling process, you want to be a semi-enjoyable, experience, not a nightmare that, that sometimes it turns into because you have inexperienced agents who are not doing their job, or an attorney who, is not helpful in the transaction. And, then we become handcuffed as agents sometimes when the attorney is really not willing to work with us. It's one of the most frustrating things that we have to deal with. And it doesn't have to be like that, because we don't want you to have to do everything. We want to take the responsibility and the load of getting the deal done faster. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add to that, or?
No, I don't think so. But if we keep the brokers informed, a lot of times clients are calling brokers before they call their attorney.
yeah, absolutely.
So if we keep the broker informed, and then the client's calling the broker to ask a question, the broker answers that question, it saves time for the attorney. It's one less phone call that we have to handle.
Yep.
And like really quick, before we move into investors here, like, so what would you consider your job in the transition process, right? Like, our job, like, we should be doing those things, facilitating it. You're looking out for the client's legal best interest, right? Making sure that the T's are crossed, right? The I's are dotted, stuff like that.
I mean,
but it's not necessarily your job. You shouldn't be doing our job.
Yeah, we shouldn't be negotiating the deal. A lot of times there's an agreed upon price, there's an agreed upon down payment, and then something comes up and now the price has to change. And if there's going to be negotiations that continue after we're involved, I usually defer to the brokers for that. Let them negotiate the price. Maybe something came up on an inspection, and so now they want a reduction in price.
What's included, not included, any of those types of terms.
Have the brokers talk, and when you get to the point where the inspection is done and the whatever repairs have to be worked out, that should all be done before it even gets to the attorney.
Right.
And then we can include it in the contract if necessary. If the broker calls us and says the inspection was done and there's 5 repairs that need to be done, I can put that in the contract.
Right.
But I don't want to have to be the one calling the attorney on the other side and saying, we're looking for a price reduction. There's some stuff that came up on the inspection. It should all be worked out.
That's
we should be the ones putting it on paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the negotiations should be done before it gets to us.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Anything you wanted to add?
Yep. Before we move to investing, so went over a couple things. Obviously, the communication, the timely manner of moving forward. A couple other things I had was just it really pays. And as a realtor, well, as a buyer, we always try to look out, like Ed said, for the best interest of the client. And That's why we offer a list of local attorneys. And the benefit of using somebody local is that they have localized knowledge. They know the verbiage of the contracts. Like if you have somebody coming from, let's just say New York City. New York City does real estate a little bit differently. You know, it's not exactly the same as Orange County. So a lot of times if somebody from the city is moving, relocating, they'll want to use a New York City attorney. It doesn't really benefit them always to do that because, right, somebody up here knows more about this area. They know how the contracts are typically written. And so we find that we get a lot of pushback, and it ends up taking a lot longer to get fully executed contracts when the attorney's out of area, right?
Yeah, it's much smoother when we're working with local attorneys, local lenders, local brokers.
Yeah, because they know the area. Remember,
Yeah.
we'll give a quick story on that. Remember the one deal that we had going on? We've done so many deals together, I don't even know. But the one deal where there was a broker from the city or something, or sorry, an attorney from the city. We were listing a property. They had an issue with the boundary line because there was a rock wall back from when it was farmland that they were calling. They were on the survey that they had a problem with that, thinking that was a boundary issue.
Right.
And it wasn't. It was a pile of rocks from however many years ago. It had nothing to do, right, with the boundary, and they couldn't grasp that. We're out there literally with a camera, video camcording the stuff, sending it to the attorney, being like, "Look, this is not a wall. It's not there's no castle here. It's not a wall. It's not like a structure. It's a pile of rocks."
The only reason that's funny is because rock walls dividing parcels is so prevalent in Orange County that if you're from here and you work here, you know that. So it's only funny if you're know, around. But you can understand if you're like from out of the area, then they're just trying to protect their client, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a geographical location restriction or benefit. So that's why we always push to work with someone local.
It's the same thing with the title companies. What's going to happen when you get these New York City attorneys? They hire a New York City title company, and now you're paying New York City rates on title searches and endorsements and document preparation fees and the cost to pay off the mortgage that the title company will charge. It's different when you get south of Rockland County, especially into New York City. They're going to charge much higher rates than the local title companies are going to charge.
Yeah. And so wherever you are watching this, I guess the message there is obviously local people know the local area. So wherever you are, whatever state you're in or whatever, you probably feel the same way to a degree. If you're working with local people, it tends to make the transaction more seamless, more smooth, less hiccups, and in some cases cheaper, which is always a good thing.
I mean, an example is the mortgage pickup fee. The title company is going to pay off the seller's existing mortgage, and they're going to charge a fee for that. It's usually around $175. But if you get a title company from New York City, that could be $350
that you're paying. So yeah, absolutely. Local is always better. Do you have anything in closing on the realtor side that you want to?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I was going to mention it definitely pays to use an attorney. I mean, I've had experiences with buyers who are union employees, or maybe they have an attorney in the family and somebody is offered to them at a very low cost or no cost for their real estate transaction. Although that's a nice gesture, I do not advise it. I never advise my buyers to utilize that type of service or, offering. And the reason being is because you want to use an attorney that's specialized in real estate, because that's their specialty. It's just like you wouldn't go to a doctor who specializes in, a certain type of disease. You would want somebody that's specialized versus like a general practitioner, right? So that's kind of the best comparison that I could think of. And then the only other thing I had was, attorneys that utilize virtual capabilities. So signing contracts digitally if possible, and doing Zoom calls and things like that, all of which Ed is open to. And I know some other local attorneys are, so that's always a nice feature, especially with somebody that's relocating.
Yeah, and it speeds up the transaction and makes it smoother. This is everything that we're talking about when you're up to date on things. Did you have anything on realtors you wanted to close with before we get to investors?
Just to recap some of the stuff we talked about. I mean, the agent and the attorney, they should act like they're on the same team, because they are on the same
Instead
team.
of putting the dukes
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Get me as much detail as you can up front. It'll assist me in getting the contract out quickly. And I like to keep the agents in the loop, keep them apprised of what's going on.
Yeah. We have a habit on our team of sending out all the attorneys like a bottle of bourbon or wine or something to try to butter them up so that they don't hate us. I don't know. Maybe you should try that. Anyway, so let's move on to the investors that are watching. So as an investor, as a real estate investor, it's a little bit different than obviously the transaction when you're working with just somebody who's buying a home to live in. We're not going to talk about commercial and stuff necessarily. We're just going to talk about real estate investors because I think there's a lot of people that are part of what we do in the Rockstar partnership that are investors in residential real estate, flips, BRRRRs, all different kinds of stuff like that. And so one of the biggest things when it comes to a transaction, when it's an investment, a lot of times they're tougher and they're more risky. And there's reasons for that, because typically on a transaction with an investment, it's going to probably, in many cases, be an as-is sale, and there's going to be a short period to close. So you have to have an attorney that obviously is familiar with dealing with foreclosure companies, and then even foreclosure, lenders, private lenders, stuff like that, because it's a little bit different. And for a buyer who is an investor, especially somebody who's a newbie, who's not really acclimated to this process, it could be very stressful, and they might not be aware of some of the things that could happen to them. Some of those things are, number one, they don't like mortgage contingencies, right? On a lot of these deals, when it comes to investments, they want you to buy this property and they don't want a mortgage contingency. And if you can't close, then there is a probability, or at least a good chance, that they're not going to give you your down payment back, right?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. If you make an offer and it's a cash deal, and you're planning on getting financing, maybe from like some hard money, or just planning on, you're certain that you're going to get the mortgage, so you're okay with it being a cash deal. If you don't get that mortgage and it comes time to close, you could lose your down payment.
Yeah. If you can't, like, if you have the cash, obviously, then you can close if it's liquid cash. But if for some reason you're working with a private lender or whatever, or you have if something goes wrong within that, and you can't now get that mortgage, typically you're not going to have a mortgage contingency in there. So you run the risk of now you got to try to, hope that they'll give you your down payment back, stuff like that, which technically they're not entitled to have to do legally. So those are some of the things that you deal with. And just the process of having to close fast. A lot of times you're not going to get municipals, or you need to, you might want to request them, but sometimes municipals take longer, and now you're dealing with an issue of needing to close faster than municipals come in. And so there's these things that arise as an investor that don't typically arise if you're just a normal, home buyer. And so investors need to be made aware of that by their attorney to help them understand, like, hey, this is the risk that you face, right, in this transaction right now. And so one of the other things, like doing an investment deal, the structures can sometimes, we've done some structures that are non-traditional, joint ventures, things like that, right?
Right.
An attorney has to be competent and seasoned to be able to get a little bit creative sometimes to get deals done, or you're going to, as an investor, miss out on some good deals, because as a good real estate investor, you're always looking for ways to get the deal done. And it's not straightforward all the time. It's not just, a straight path. Sometimes you've got to take a detour and be like, okay, we need to do, we might need to hold a note for somebody, or ask for a note to be held. And then, they might be able to, request a balloon period, right? And do these different things that are going to allow us to get into the deal. Without doing, we won't get into the deal, right? And so having an attorney that understands those nuances and can help you, mitigate your risk in the process of it, and help you structure contracts and get creative, is vital as an investor. And that's one of the things that I like, working with you and value about our relationship. We've done lots of different deals together where, we've had to structure contracts or figure out how to get a deal done that's, non-traditional, straightforward.
Yeah, we have done several of those. Hopefully they were legal. I think they were.
Well, if they weren't, we got them to close now.
That's another important thing. Make sure they have a good sense of humor.
Yes, yes. Makes life much easier, right? When you laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to add on the investor side? You
Well,
don't, you charge more, right? You charge more than that.
Well, if you're buying the bank-owned properties that have already been foreclosed on, now the bank owns them. What they're going to do is they're going to send the buyer's attorney a contract, and they're not going to let him make any changes to it. It's almost going to be strictly as is property. So you need to know what you're buying. You need to look at the property and make sure you understand it's strictly as is. You can do an inspection, but the seller is not going to be a real person. They're not going to make any repairs. They're not going to agree to reduce the price. It's going to be a strictly as is sale, and it's usually going to have a time of the essence date.
Yeah.
You're going to have to close by a certain time or risk losing your down payment. So you have to be willing to take the chance and willing to accept the risk and just know what you're getting into when you buy that property.
Yeah, and perfectly said. And that's the thing. Like, if you're an investor, you are a risk taker. Obviously, accept that title because there's risk involved with investment. And working with a competent attorney like Ed, we're able to kind of, mitigate the risk as much as possible going forward. There are times when, I've lost money, right? I lost money, and that was my fault, though. That wasn't your fault. You did warn me. I kind of neglected something there, and I lost the down payment. But that was not my attorney's fault. That was my fault. And so, like, that's the deal with investing. Like, you're gonna have scenarios that occur that you got to make decisions on and move forward. And it's when you have a good, competent attorney in your toolbox, that can be a game changer and a lifesaver for you. You could it could save you losing a lot of money. I mean, really, like, because some investment deals can, they can go south if you don't know what you're doing, and that's something that you should not work with an incompetent attorney on, because it's more risky. So that's really the point of that. So if you are watching and you're an investor, hopefully we gave you some good content there about working with a competent attorney, right? Is there anything that you wanted to add on the investment side before we close up here?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into. Because there's no way out once you sign the contract. I mean, unless they can't give you clear title, that's usually the only contingency that you're going to find on some of these investment deals where you're buying from a bank that previously foreclosed or something like that.
Right. Absolutely. So know what you're doing, work with a competent attorney. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, what we brought to you. Hopefully we didn't make the attorney transaction portion of real estate boring. Hopefully we were very informative for you and you were able to get some good content out of it. So if you're a realtor, let us know if we gave you some good content. Drop us a like button, drop us a comment. Let us know if you're an investor. So Ed Bruno is, if you're local to the New York area, we'll give Ed Bruno a quick shout out here. So if you're local to Orange County, New York, where we are over here, Ed Bruno is online, right? You're on Facebook, Ed Bruno Real Estate Attorney.
Correct.
And it's at Ed Bruno ESQ online. We'll drop some of the information in the comments, so you can check that out to get a hold of him if you'd like to. So if anybody else got anything to say in closing, want to sign off? We're good to go.
Just I cover Orange County, Ulster County, Sullivan County, Dutchess County. For the most part, on occasions we go outside of those areas, but that's the areas predominantly that we're practicing in.
Only for good clients, though.
Only for good clients.
So we want to thank you for watching another episode of Real Estate Rockstar Partnership. We hope we brought you some value. We hope we helped you in some way improve your business and add to some sort of multiple streams of income in real estate, whether that be your transactional income as a realtor or your investment income as an investor. Keep tuning in for more information and great content. We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, we're going to sign off and wish you a very profitable day, week, month, and year. Take care.